Hello, duelists. Welcome back to Old Format Yu-Gi-Oh! It's been a while, and I'm sorry for that, but just due to a couple complications over the past few months, this had to be a bit delayed. But, as you can tell by the title, we are doing a Tengu Plant Format tournament. As usual, this is an in-house tournament, ran between me and my friends, and if you couldn't tell by the title, we're doing a bit of an interesting format, which we like to call draft format. And we'll go over that in a little bit, but first we're just going to go over the format. So, Tengu Plant Format, YCS Toronto, October 2011. Probably maybe the third or fourth most popular format, probably the fourth behind Hat, Goat, and Edison at this point. And it is known for having several decks that are all playable, and it's a very fun format. It's actually when I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! To give a little bit of a story, I remember I showed up to my first local that became my local for life, basically. And I showed up with the Agent Structure deck, and I met one of my friends, Mark, who takes part in these tournaments. And he basically told me, like, oh, you need some help with that deck? And I'm like, yeah, I could use some pointers, because it was my first time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Since I was like 5. And he basically said, okay, you need to buy 3 structure decks, you need 3 Arc Lord Christia, etc., etc. And I'm like, oh, okay, is that expensive? He's like, yeah, Arc Lord Christias are about $100 a pop. And that was when I first learned of how Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be with money. But it was a fun experience. Either way, let's go down a little bit, just take a look at the quick ban list real quick, if there's anything interesting here over the years. Mind Master is gone, Substitute, if you've played Edison, is gone, Dark Strike Fighter, Goyo Guardian, Brain Control. Anything else? Not really of note that I can see, at least. Down here, we have the Black Wings Limited, Kalute, and Gale. They're still really, really strong in this format. Dark Arm Dragon, obviously, Dandelion. Tengu Plant also features the Lightsworns pretty prevalently, being pretty high up there in the deck rankings, I would say. Lumina, Lone Fire, both limited. Honest, limited, thank God. Stratos, limited, sadly. Nothing else of note that I'm seeing. Sheehan Smoke Signal, that's actually a pretty decent one, too. Compared to Edison, Six Samurai is playable in Tengu Plant, because they have all the support and stuff like that. Christie at 2, Card Trooper at 2, Summoner Monk at 2, Trag 2. Nothing too special down here that I can see, at least. If I go over here to the deck gallery, this is on formatlibrary.com, great resource for any old format, you can see that there are a ton of cool decks, and these are just the ones that have topped recent tournaments, and there honestly aren't too many for Tengu Plant right now, on Format Library or otherwise, but they are pretty cool, pretty cool. Next, let's just go into 2 of the tournaments, 24 players, and you can see the top 8, Hero Beat, Synchro Plant, Agent, Karakuri, Piper Chaos, Psychic Zombie, Agent, and Fusion Gate heroes. Only real repeat is Agents, which is a very strong deck, but just goes to show, a very diverse top 8. Psychics are actually really cool, because they're not too good much more after this format, besides Grand Soil Psychics in 2012, give or take. But either way, cool to see. Another one, 31 players, and we had Chaos Control, Agents, Gear Plant, and Fusion Gate heroes. All very cool. So, now that I went a little bit over the format, let's talk about the rules for this. This is a Tengu Plant draft tournament. So, I'll show you in a second how the actual draft progressed, but each player is basically going to choose 4 decks in a snake-style draft. That means we randomized 1 to 14, because we had 14 players, I believe, and we pick in that order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on. But when we get to 14, the 14th player chooses twice, and then we loop back around and go 13, 12, 11, and so on. So if you get first pick first round, you have last pick second round. So it's a toss-up of where you actually want to be. Next, before a match is chosen, each player will select one of their decks secretly. It is not known what deck they are playing. I know we did that sometimes in previous tournaments. Once that deck is chosen, and this is the big kicker of the tournament, whether you lose or you win with that deck, you cannot use it for the rest of Swiss. That deck is locked out. You'll notice that we're going to have 4 rounds of Swiss, meaning that you have 4 decks to play, and once you play one, you can't play it again. So you kind of have to decide what deck you're going to play versus what opponent. You'll see we created a rudimentary tier list later, and basically you have to kind of decide, like, oh, I'm against a strong player. Should I play tier 1, or should I just, quote-unquote, take the loss and play tier 4 and get rid of that deck? It's a bit of a hard choice, although you'll see a general trend that most people chose to do the same thing. Lastly, these deck lockouts are going to be reset in top 8, which I think makes perfect sense, meaning actually if you get to the finals, you'll have 2 decks available, depending on which one you want to play. And lastly, deck lists are going to be private until top 8, so going into these matches, no one knows what the others are playing. I know that's not typically what we do, but a couple people wanted to try something a little bit different and go for more of a surprise factor with things. So, hopefully I'm not blinding you, but there isn't really a easy dark mode on Google Docs. So, here is a very rudimentary tier list, and I would like to preface this with saying that I do not believe in a tier list, especially in Tengu Plant Format. The decks are so diverse. If you check out on YouTube, and I'm going to give him a big shout out in a little bit, TCG Rewind, he does a tier list, and basically he ranks everything from tier 1 to tier 2.5, I think. Meaning that everything is relatively equal, honestly. And he ranks, I think, like 72 decks. You'll notice we compressed it a little bit from 72. But what I'm trying to say is this tier list here is not a real tier list. We had 4 of the people that played in this format kind of make it. We played a little bit online too, just to determine what was what. And it's mainly for the people in the draft that do not know the format. So they have an idea of what could be tier 1, what could be tier 2, etc. Honestly, though, I would believe in TCG Rewind. He has a lot more experience with the format. And he's definitely going to get a shout out and a link in the description, of course. Go check him out and subscribe to him as well. But these are all rudimentary. You might as well see tier 1, tier 1.5, tier 2, and tier 2.5. But for people not aware, it's a much easier format to say 1, 2, 3, 4. So, let's get into the draft order. All of these names, I don't believe we have any new players. Oh no, we do. Tyler is actually a new player. He's the one, although he's also relatively new to Yugioh. He hasn't played in a couple years, but decided to compete. But we have Nico, Jason, Adrian, Josh, Chris Pete, Noel, Tyler, Mark, Brad, Anthony G, Eric, Chris R, Rick, and Roach. Now, of note, as we usually do, the previous tournament winners get kind of a reward, if you will. That's how we always done it here. So, in our 2v2 hat format tournament, Adrian and Chris Patrick actually won. They were basically co-winners. So what they got as the reward is that they got to choose their deck before anyone else. And their position in the draft was still randomized, but they chose their deck first. So it's kind of like they chose first, but they still remained in their position, which actually means that they would prefer to be in the back of the draft. However, that did not happen. So they got a bit unlucky with that one. But let's get into what was chosen. First off, we have Nico choosing Lightsworn. He likes Lightsworn in pretty much any format he can play it, and easily a tier 1 deck, I would say. Next, I went with TGs. If you go on the, I don't remember if it's the Tengu Plant Discord, which I'll also link in the description, or if it's Format Library Tengu Plant, they give kind of 5 tier 1 decks for the format, and it is Agents, Chaos, Dark World, TGs, and Tengu Plant, of course. So I decided to go with TGs, strong first pick, and I used to love just playing TGs. I like playing a lot of trap cards, and it's quite fun. Of note, while I'm thinking about it, Dark World is a bit in a weird spot when it comes to Tengu Plant Format. So some people choose to play with Dark Worlds, and some do not, because it's a little debatable. It kind of came out in the middle of the format, and of note also with it came out, I believe, Elemental Hero Great Tornado. I might be wrong on that, but either way, we both decided to play with those cards. We decided that it's not that big of a deal, and also we're doing a draft format tournament. You have to play 4 decks. You can't just run back Dark World over and over again. So we decided, like, it's fine to keep it in. I know various Discords have changed their mind about it and argued about it. We decided to play with it because why not? Okay, next we have Adrian. He decided to go with Agents. This pick was decided before the draft as his winner's reward, so he had Agents. Everyone knew about it beforehand. Next, we have Josh choosing Tengu Plant. He had no idea what to choose because he's never played this format, and he wanted some advice, and everyone just said, hey, why not take Tengu Plant, which makes sense. Next, we have Chris Patrick going with Dark World because he won, and he heard that Dark World was the best deck, despite him not really playing Dark Worlds. So this was the last pick that was also chosen before we started the draft. Next, we have Noel with Heroes. He is a predominant hero player. He did say that he would murder in a video game any person who picked Heroes before him, so we're there. Tower chose Chaos. He really wanted Lightsworn, but sadly Nico was ahead of him. Mark went with Water Synchro. Brad went with Junk Doppel. And if it sounds like I'm going over these quickly, it's because these players don't really have a connection with the deck, per se. Not that I know of, at least. So Anthony G went Destiny Heroes, and Edison is a big Diva Hero player, so Destiny Hero is kind of how he lumped them together. You'll see here Destiny/Diva Hero. But I know it's a little iffy calling it Destiny or Diva Hero. The deck is kind of unproven a little bit in Tengu Plant, in our opinion. Like, it didn't perform historically, and recent tournaments we didn't see much of it, but he decided to pick it up. Eric with Dragons. He always plays Dragons when possible. Chris R with Gravekeepers, he just wanted to ruin someone's day. Rick with Gadgets, standard deck he plays a lot. And Roach with 6 Samurai. I remember he just said he wanted to ruin some people's days with Gateway. Roach gets the double pick and went with Stun, showing that he's kind of going like a bit of a stun strategy with 6 Sam Stun. Rick with Dragoonity, pretty solid. Chris with Black Wings, of note that's separate from Vayu Turbo. Eric with Norlira's Dragons, also known as Disaster Dragon or Dark Dragons. Very annoying deck and probably the least fun deck to play against. Anthony with Zombies, that is the deck he's known for. I believe he won an Edison tournament in person with Zombies. Oh, no, sorry. Better yet, I think he did that too, but he also won a Yugioh tournament with Zombies, if you guys know what that is. That is a blast from the past. Brad went with Machina, actually a deck he's also known for. Mark with Nordics, his favorite archetype. He figured no one would choose it, so he waited on to choose it in round 2, but he was a bit scared, I remember. Tyler with X-Sabers. Noah with Karakuri. Chris Patrick with GBs. Of note, Gladiator Beasts are a fun deck, and he has a very interesting take on the deck, which you'll see. Of note, Brad did not choose it. Brad is our resident Gladiator Beasts player. He actually he topped a YCS back during back during Edison with Gladiator Beasts, which was really cool because he was the only person topping back then with it. And he decided not to play it because back in the Edison format tournament, Brad was up 2-0 in the finals and then got swept 3-0 while playing Gladiator Beasts, so he decided to take a break from the deck. Next we have Josh with Vayu Turbo. He actually got pretty far in the Edison tournament with Vayu Turbo, although Vayu Turbo is another unproven deck in Tengu Plant. Adrian with Monster Mash, likes the deck, who doesn't like it. I went with Infernities. Of note, this is Synchro Infernity. I was a big fan of XYZ Infernity in hat format, so I decided, why not try it? I used to play it a little bit online, but figure it's a nice little walk down memory lane for me. Plus, it's pretty competitive, I would say. Next, we have Nico with Monarchs, which is what I was debating because I was a big Monarch player for most of my life. Nico's also going to double choose Flamevel, very high performing deck in Edison. I went with Mystic Piper, another fun deck, very fun. I remember messing with it a lot when I was younger with Mech Lord Weissel and stuff like that. It's just a cool build that you can play. Also, of note, Piper Chaos does top every now and then in Tengu Plant, so that's cool too. Next we have Psychics for Adrian, Josh with KFC. Now, if you might have noticed this notes section down here, KFC refers to the Carpath deck, which is Karaz Field Spell Control. It's an interesting deck that plays Karaz, Ancient Gear Dragons, Gear Towns, and plants. It's a very cool control strategy, and I like the deck a lot, and we'll see how Josh pilots it, because I know when he picked it, he had no idea what it was. He just said, you know what, I like Kentucky Fried Chicken, so why not? Chris Patrick went Spellcasters, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the first Tier 4 deck chosen. I know he was just going for the stun strategy of Secret Village to lock off all spells, and we'll see how that works out for him. Noah went with Macro Cosmos, annoying deck. Tyler went with Fableds. I believe this was one of the decks he used to play and knew about, so he chose that. Mark went with Fish. Of note, he actually used to play Fish OTK in person, so Mark is actually really looking up with his draft picks, getting 2 decks that he used to mainly play in person. Brad with Scraps. Anthony with Relinquished, another deck that he used to play in person. Eric with Naturia, which is another Tier 4 deck of note, and he has never played Naturia before. Chris is going to go with Malefic Skill Drain, one of my favorite decks. I was known for it at locals. Actually, to tell a little bit of a story, and I'll make this quick. Of course, you can always just skip past this section. Back when I used to play it, no one really liked playing against me because, Malefic Skill Drain, you put a Cyber End on board and then you flip Skill Drain, and it's like, what does your opponent even do? And of note, there's some memories with people in this group from that deck. Josh was playing Ancient Gears, like base Ancient Gears. He was brand new to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was like, hey man, have fun. And then I dropped that, and he did not have fun, according to him. So he was having a great time until he played against me, which was fun. And another time, I remember it was the last time I played the deck, I went to a local, and my friend Roach was there, and they're like, hey Jason, what are you playing? And I'm like, why does that matter, Roach? And he said, okay. Granted, I've been playing Malefics for a couple months straight at this point. And then I played against him, and Roach was always on Chaos Agents at that point, and I would always Royal Tribute him for like 5 cards, and he would not be happy. So he beat me game 1, and then game 2, I Royal Tribute him as usual, going first, and then he discards 2 Dark Worlds, because he sided into Dark Worlds to get around the Royal Tribute. And I'm like, you know what, Roach? Good game. I scooped, and then I never played the deck again. It was quite fun. That's when I became a Monarch player. So there's a little story time for you. Let's see, Rick went with Battery Men. He knows nothing about that. Roach with Mist Valleys. In his words, he wants to win the tournament with Ultra Mega Chicken, which is Apex Avion. We have Gigaplant from Roach. He played that in Edison, too. He was undefeated 2-0. Rockstun from Rick. Counter Fairies from Chris. Jinzo for Eric. Eric actually did play Jinzo Returner OTK in person a little bit, so he is knowledgeable in that deck. Anthony with Jirax. Brad with Worms. I think Worms being in tier 3 is a little iffy. I fought for it to be in tier 2 a little bit. There were just some disagreements on it. I think Worms is really strong. The trap card W Nebula Meteorite is one of the best trap cards ever printed, in my opinion, and you will see it later in this tournament perform decently well, I'd say. Mark picks up Herald. Of note, to keep things a bit more unique, we decided to go with no agents in Herald. We wanted to go with what was called Happy Herald. I think it was coined by Jeff Jones, which is kind of the normal monster version of it. There was heavy debate on this, and we decided just to keep the draft unique, we didn't want people splashing a bunch of stuff. So that was our take on it, and what we decided to go with. Tar with Ojama's bold pick. No, with Gear. Oh, Ancient Gears. That's pure Ancient Gears. In tier 4, I think is also a bit debatable, because in Edison, that deck can actually perform pretty well. Chris Patrick with Aliens. Josh with Windups. I know people might be saying, what the heck is Windups? You'll see the list. It's a list from TCG Rewind, and it mainly is like rank 5 spam. It's pretty cool. Adrian with Watts. That was the deck I wanted to take for my last pick, but it got stolen from me. I decided to go with the Volcanics. And for the last pick in the draft, Nico decided to go with Spaceships. And that rounds out our draft. So, of note, nothing super out there, I would say. The one pick that was a little weird was Chris on the Spellcasters. We'll see how that pays off, because most people stuck with the tiers. And I would say maybe like 3 or 4 of the people here are the ones who are not familiar. And everyone was aware that the tiers are very general. So next, we're going to give a shout out to TCG Rewind for basically helping a lot of players with their deck building. So he has compiled a list here of about 70 decks, and they're all great. If you click on one of them, let's just pick Tengu Plant. You can see a picture of it in person, very high rarity as well. You scroll down, dueling book link, deck list in paper, and it's great. And every now and then, he also has a couple articles, and the website also just looks pretty beautiful. You could see his little tier list here where he ranks all 72 decks. He has a Poppin' YouTube channel that you should subscribe to, and all of this will be linked down below. The main reason I'm shouting this out is because a lot of people just went to TCG Rewind and took the deck list for the draft. Some people created, but most people did that. So I got to give shout out where it's due. And with that, I think you are ready to watch the tournament. As usual, I'm going to be posting the videos every day for the next while. It's a bit more of a smaller YouTube venture. I posted all of top 8. However, for each round, I posted 2 matches because it was 7 matches a round, and I don't want to go back to the Edison days where I edited every single one because it's quite annoying to go through all those recordings. So I hope you enjoy. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe so you can get notified when the new episodes go up, usually around 5 or 6 Eastern each day. And most importantly, have a good one, duelists.